You're listening to How to Drink Less, and I'm your host, Adriana Cloud. Whether your goal is to cut back, take a break, or say goodbye to alcohol for good, this podcast will help you stop drinking on autopilot, learn how to manage cravings, and feel fully in control around alcohol. It's easier than you think. Listen on to find out how. Welcome back, everyone. This week's episode is a companion to last week's when we talked about the question, what is alcohol giving you? If you haven't listened to that one already, make sure to check it out. And this week, I want you to do a 180 and ask yourself, what is alcohol taking away? Except there's a few caveats to this question. I don't want you to give just the obvious surface level answers. I want you to go deeper and explore a few different directions. So that's what I'm going to talk you through. But before we dive in, I want to explain the purpose of this question. Please hear me when I say the point is never to judge yourself or to shame yourself. I hereby forbid you to use anything I say on this podcast against yourself. You do not have my permission to use my work for self-judgment or self-blame. Got it? Good. The only reason I will ever ask you a particular question or offer an observation is to help you understand your drinking habits better and to understand yourself better. That's it. My only motivation is to help you deepen your awareness of your relationship with alcohol because, as I keep saying, the better you understand something, the more power you have over it. So, with that in mind, let's return to our question. What is alcohol taking away from you? It's worth sitting with this question as an antidote for the common belief that if we quit drinking, we're giving something up. And for most people, health is the first thing that comes to mind when they consider what alcohol is taking from them. Whether it's affecting your sleep, or you notice that you're putting on weight or struggling to lose weight, or maybe you've been diagnosed with fatty liver or pancreatitis, and you've been told by your doctor that you need to cut back. Or maybe you haven't experienced anything that serious yet, but you're just tired of waking up with a hangover every single day, which was my situation. Some people notice alcohol interferes with their digestion, or it makes their skin look puffier or more wrinkled, or there's other physical symptoms that show up as well. And there's the impact to mental health as well. Alcohol worsens anxiety and depression, and it interferes with the effects of anti-anxiety medication and antidepressants. So it's a double whammy in that sense. Maybe that's what you're noticing that alcohol is taking away from you. One of the things that I was noticing was that alcohol was affecting my memory, and that was quite scary to contemplate. Even now, I shudder to think of the damage I've incurred on my memory and my brain in general. And it's worth saying that in addition to any health impacts that have already manifested, there's the potential health impacts in the future because alcohol increases the risk of various cancers and many other health conditions. So that's one of what I call the obvious answers. The other big one is relationships. For many people, the impetus to seek change comes when a relationship has been affected by alcohol, whether it's one too many drunken arguments with their partner, or yelling at their kids when they've been drinking, or saying or doing something hurtful to other people they love and care about that they would never say or do when they're sober. That's the wake-up call for many people when someone else in their life has been affected by their drinking. So one or both of these come up all the time, health and relationships. But if you haven't already, I want you to cast the net wider and consider the broader implications of your drinking. There's finances for one. It's a scary exercise to do, but it might be illuminating to tally up how much you spend on alcohol per week on average, and then multiply that by 52 weeks. And think about how many years you've been drinking and do that math as well. Since I quit drinking, which was about 4.5 years ago at this point, I've saved about $25,000. And mind you, that's a very conservative estimate. And that's the estimate just for what I would have spent buying alcohol. This doesn't account for late night taxis, late night stops at the kebab shop, other ill advised online purchases at 3 a.m., lost jackets, lost phones, lost money, and so on. It doesn't account for the inevitable medical costs I would have incurred if I had continued drinking the way I was drinking. And it doesn't account for time lost to drinking or to recovering from drinking, which we'll come back to. And your list of expenses related to alcohol might look different from mine, but I encourage you to consider what alcohol is really costing you. Not just what you might be planning to spend on it today or this week, but the cumulative cost of being a drinker over the remaining years of your life. What else could you do with that money if you weren't going to spend it on booze? And then there's the loss of productivity. I don't love that term, and I'm certainly not saying that we should all subscribe to the cult of productivity that capitalism endorses. I am firmly of the belief that we're all worthy human beings, even if we're not constantly maximizing our potential and being productive 24/7. So I'm not saying that we should always strive to be as productive as possible. But when you're a drinker, that tends to affect how you spend your time and the quality of what you're producing. So, first of all, there is the question of actual time. You thought that tallying up how much money you spend on alcohol is scary? Try tallying up how many hours you've spent drinking over your life. That is an exercise that will make your head spin. And for an extra dose of horror, add up all the time you spent recovering from drinking, just lying on the couch feeling miserable, ruminating about last night. For me, that was an uncomfortably large number of hours every week, double digits for sure. What could you do if you got back even just 5 extra hours every week, or 10 hours, or 20 hours every week? Never mind being productive. You could do so many more enjoyable and worthwhile things. Sleeping, spending time with loved ones, making art, sitting in nature, playing, volunteering, learning new things, having sex, enjoying your hobbies, planning a revolution, staring into space. I mean, the list is endless. And then there's the question of the quality of output. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're doing it with a hangover after a night of alcohol-laced sleep, you're not doing your best work, I'm sorry to tell you. If you're doing physical work, alcohol reduces strength and endurance. It slows down your reflexes. It affects coordination. It slows down your reaction time. It slows down muscle recovery. So not only are you not at peak performance, but you're increasing the risk of injury to yourself and to others. And alcohol affects your thinking too. So even if you're engaged in mental rather than physical labor, that suffers as well. When you sleep with alcohol in your system, you're losing REM sleep and deep sleep. So you're not getting the rest that your body needs and your brain needs. You might be passed out, but that's not quality sleep. That's just a state of unconsciousness. And when you don't get quality sleep, that has a negative impact on your ability to concentrate, on your memory, on the parts of your brain that are responsible for learning new information and making connections between the things you already know. It affects your creativity, your problem-solving skills. I could go on, but you get the point, which is that as a drinker, you are not doing your best thinking. And again, this affects not just the work that you do for your job, but all areas of life as well. Because if you will allow me to point out the obvious, you use your body and your mind not just for work, but for everything else. Alcohol also messes with your ability to experience joy and pleasure. Alcohol is stealing your joy. Yes, at first, Alcohol causes a surge of dopamine, which is why that first drink might make you feel a little giddy and looser or more animated and social. But your brain starts compensating almost immediately by dampening your natural reward response to avoid overstimulation. And alcohol dulls your senses. So if you're eating something delicious while drinking, you can't taste it fully. Or things like getting a hug or watching a beautiful sunset that might normally move you don't register as powerfully. And there's sexual pleasure as well, which is a whole topic unto itself, and I'll do an episode about that at some point. But while alcohol might increase desire and lower inhibitions, it reduces physical sensitivity, so you can't fully feel what's happening in your body, which I think we can all agree is the opposite of what you want in those moments. You want more sensitivity, not less. And alcohol also takes away your agency. Every time you turn to alcohol to do something for you, to help you to quiet your mental chatter at the end of the day, or to tolerate dinner with your annoying sister-in-law, or to tamp down sadness or frustration, every time you do that, you're giving away your power. The analogy I give to my clients is imagine that there's something heavy you need to lift, like a suitcase, let's say. Every time you have to move that heavy suitcase, you ask your friend to lift it for you. You don't try to lift it yourself, and you don't exercise your muscles to get stronger. You're always just delegating and asking your friend to lift the suitcase. And your own muscles atrophy over time because you're not using them. And you get to a point where you can't travel anywhere without your friend because you need them or you will be completely helpless. So that's what you're doing with alcohol. You're giving it power over your life. You're becoming dependent on it. Every time you ask alcohol to solve a problem for you, you're saying, I can't handle this on my own. You'll deal with it for me. And over time, this becomes your reality. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy because you erode your own capacity to generate fun and joy for yourself, your ability to process difficult emotions without numbing, your ability to create connection without bonding over a bottle of wine, and so on. Another analogy would be if you're visiting Spain, let's say, and instead of practicing your Spanish, every time you interact with someone local, you pull out Google Translate and ask it to do the translation for you. So you don't ever learn any Spanish words, and you're now dependent on Google Translate to get by in every situation. And finally, think about how alcohol affects your relationship with yourself. I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but when I was still a drinker, one of my motivations for wanting to break my dependence on alcohol was the deep self-hatred I was mired in. I had become so disappointed with myself. I didn't like anything about that person I had become. And to be honest, I didn't really know her. I felt so disconnected from my own body and from my mind as well, because that's what happens when you're constantly numbing. And I got to a point where I didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't want to be a stranger to myself and to feel like a visitor in my own life. But that's what alcohol takes away from you. Your relationship with yourself, your self-respect, your self-trust. You keep breaking your own promises and the promises you've made to other people, and you keep letting yourself down, and you keep letting other people down, and over time, you stop trusting yourself with anything. Even though some part of you wants to feel better and live differently, you don't actually believe that you will do anything about it. And even if you muster some motivation and commit to doing better starting Monday, there is already doubt in your mind the minute you formulate that intention, because the evidence is overwhelmingly against you. You know they're just empty words you're saying to yourself. And you also lose compassion for yourself. You become your own worst critic, and you're constantly shaming yourself for not doing better and for being weak and lacking willpower. You start to think that you don't deserve to feel better, and you keep punishing yourself for your behavior. And you dig yourself deeper into this cycle. You feel bad about yourself because you drink too much, you drink to numb how bad you feel, and you feel worse because you drink too much. It's a miserable way to live. I know because I lived that way for several years. This is what alcohol takes away from you. Having your own back and showing up for yourself with kindness, the way that you would show up for a friend who is trying to make a difficult change in their life. And that is a big loss. You might come up with other answers too as to what alcohol is taking away from you. Maybe it's impacting your sense of meaning or connection to something deeper and bigger, whether that's a spiritual practice, your creativity, or simply feeling present and alive in your own experience. We talked about relationships already, but if you have children, you might be thinking about how alcohol affects your ability to be present with them and what you're modeling for them when you drink. And one of the hardest things to measure is the opportunity cost of our drinking habits. What dreams didn't get pursued? What relationships didn't deepen? What version of you didn't get to emerge because alcohol kept stealing your time, your clarity, and courage? For me, this shows up when I think about my writing. What could I have written if I hadn't wasted so much time drinking? What channels of creativity might I have been able to tap into if I hadn't been relying on alcohol for inspiration? I have one more thing I want to offer as you consider your relationship with alcohol, and that is to think about the long term. Most of us are not very good at that. When we are trying to cut back on our drinking, we can be quite short-sighted. We're worried about sitting through an awkward brunch with friends, or watching the basketball game tonight without a beer, or not enjoying a holiday without day drinking by the pool. It's these kinds of specific short-term scenarios that are playing through our minds, and we anticipate the discomfort of navigating these situations without a drink. But I invite you to zoom out and ask yourself, a year down the line, what do you want your relationship with alcohol to look like? What about 5 years down the line? What about 15, 20 years? Do you want to be drinking the way that you're currently drinking? Most people would say no. They want to be drinking less going forward. But if you want to be drinking less in the future, you have to start doing something about that today. And when you think about what alcohol is taking away from you, think about the future too. Because it's not just about what alcohol has taken from you so far or what it will prevent you from experiencing this weekend. It's about the cumulative effect alcohol will have on your life if you continue going down the road you're currently on. This might sound bleak, and I'm sorry, but I think it's important to be honest with ourselves about the impact of our choices, not just today, but in the long term too. If this episode stirred something in you, if it brought up regret or grief, or even just a quiet sense of knowing that alcohol has been taking more than you've let yourself admit, I want you to know that you're not alone. We've all been there. And we don't move forward by pretending that the loss isn't real. We move forward by telling ourselves the truth with compassion. The reason I wanted to walk you through these questions isn't to make you feel worse. It's to help you reclaim your power. Because once you see what alcohol has been costing you, you can stop letting it take more. You can decide right here, right now, that this chapter of your life that you're currently in doesn't get to be the whole story. You get to write the next one. And whatever came up for you today, please don't use it against yourself. Use it to show you what kind of life you want to build and who you want to be around alcohol. Use it as a reminder that no matter what choices you've made in the past, it's never too late to make a different choice. You can start today. All right, friends, this is where I'll leave you for right now. Thank you for listening. And thank you to those of you who reach out and tell me that what I'm sharing on the podcast is helping you on your own journey to cut back. I really appreciate hearing that. This work is so important to me, and knowing that it's making a difference in someone else's life is why I'm here every week. I have added my email to the show notes to make it easier if you want to reach out and say hello or with any questions or suggestions. So please get in touch if there's anything on your mind. And if this episode made you realize that you're done letting alcohol take things from you and you're ready to make some changes, I would love to help you. You can book a free consultation via the link in the show notes, and let's talk. Take good care and see you next week. If you're looking for practical advice for how to say no to alcohol and say yes to yourself, you will want to get on my email list. Sign up to receive my free guide with 7 steps to kickstart your sobriety. The link is in the show notes, so go and grab it now, and I'll see you soon in your inbox.